With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN Daf Memtes. We are in middle of the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel in explaining the machlokes between Rabbi Shimon that is written explicitly in the Mishnah and the sheet of the Chachamim that we introduced yesterday that argues with Rav Shimon, as we will review the details before we start reading inside. But just to speak out the following, that we're going to have on Daf Memtes a very similar case to the Mishnah. Case of the Mishnah, the case that we're going to start off today is that when you have three chatzeros, all one is adjacent to the other, each chatzer has an opening directly to the Rishus Harabim. No mavui is involved at all. There is also an opening between one chatzer and the other. And as we explained, that members of each chatzer made an eruv chatzeros with themselves. That's the case of the Mishnah. The question is whether these three chatzeros made an eruv one with the other. So we learned the cases are continuously that the one in the middle, we're calling that B, made an eruv with A. The one in the middle also made an eruv with C. But the two outer ones did not make an eruv with each other. We're going to have a very similar case where you have chatzeros on one side. Then there is a mavui. I'll show a picture in a moment. Then there is a chatzer in the center. The bnei ha-chatzer don't have access at all to the Rishus Harabim. They only get there by using a mavui. But there is also a mavui on the other side of this chatzer. And then you have the other sides, chatzer, mavui, and chatzer, as we can see over here, my beautiful picture, or as maybe Danielle will put up online over here. So this is going to be a very similar case. And here again, we're going to have various gewaldige pratim as to what were to happen if all of these three chatzeros did not make an eruv all one with the other. We're going to be learning the fundamental question of how does an eruv chatzeros work when one is made. So Shmuel says it works mishum kinyan, as we'll explain. It affects an actual acquisition. And Rabbi says that eruv works mishum dira, no acquisition is needed. And on Daf Memtes Amud Beis, we're going to have a Mishnah that's going to go back to the dinim of eruv tchumen. We will introduce a new detail in an eruv tchum. At Khan, we learned that there are two types of eruv tchumen. Either a person is ma'arei beraglov, by physically walking to the place which will become their makom hashvisa, their ground zero, their location of residence, from which they can go 2,000 amos in each direction, in all of the directions, or a person can send a shliach and place bread at the place where the person will be koine shvisa. And we'll learn in Daf Memtes Amud Beis that if a person is walking towards a city, and he's not going to make it there before dark. He's far away, but he knows that in between where he is and the city, there is a large tree. And that tree, for example, is already 2,000 amos or less from where he is. And that tree is also 2,000 amos and less from the city or from his house. Ideally, he would have wanted to place the eruv tchumen there, but he cannot make it there on time. A person knowing that specific location, making a declaration and making a specific declaration, not my makom hashvisa is by the tree, but he gives a detail. He says my makom hashvisa is by the trunk of the tree. That oral declaration affects a bona fide eruv tchumen, and now he's 2,000 amos from the tree. He can walk to the tree. His house is from the other side, weiter 2,000 amos or less from the tree. In other words, he'll be able to walk 4,000 amos by orally declaring a specific makom hashvisa and other pratim, as we'll see in the Mishnah on Daf Memtes Amud Beis. Okay, so let's come back to our Mishnah, right? To the Mishnah on Daf Mem Hey, and now to the machlokes Rav and Shmuel. So again, the case is that you have three chatzeros, all one adjacent to the other. Each chatzer has an exit to the Rishus Harabim. No one has to walk from one to the other. Each chatzer in themselves has many batim, and they made an eruv chatzeros. A, B, and C, each one made an eruv chatzeros with themselves. Happens to be that there is an opening from the center to one side and from the center to the other side. We're calling the center B, and the both sides is A and C. Now, the B made an eruv with A. B made an eruv with C. But A and C did not make an eruv. So the Mishnah we learned that Rabbi Shimon says that you can carry, that the middle one can carry to both sides. Now let's go into details. What is pshat carrying? Are they allowed to carry both ways or only one way? So Rav says that Rav Shimon, who is the matir, who's the lenient shita, he allows carrying in both directions. Means B can carry to A can carry to B. B can carry to C can carry to B. When I say one can carry to the other, we mean we're speaking about an article that when Shabbos came in was in B, it can be taken to C. An article that when Shabbos came in was in the Chatzar C can be taken to B. In other words, Rav understands Rav Shimon's leniency total. Now, everyone knows, as we learned yesterday, that the Chachamim, who shitas b'chlal not written in the Mishnah, there is a Chachamim that argues with Rav Shimon, and they restrict the movement. Says Rav that the Chachamim, even the Chachamim allow the outer to the inner. They allow something that began in C to be taken to B. They allow something that began in A to be taken to B. The Chachamim that argue with Rav Shimon only disallow something that began in the center to go to the outer sides. So is Shitas Rav in the machlokes between Rav Shimon and the Chachamim. Now Shmuel disagrees with Rav. Now we're going to learn this according to the way all of the Rishonim understand Shmuel, that Shmuel holds that the Chachamim do not allow any exchange. Shmuel holds the Chachamim do not allow, they completely argue with Rav Shimon. The question is, what is Shita Shmuel b'Shitas Rav Shimon? Okay, so when we learned yesterday, when we finished and we learned the top line in the Amid and Daf Mem Tes, we spoke out the first explanation of Rashi in the Shita of Shmuel and the Shita of Rav Shimon. That we learned yesterday. I'm going to speak out now the second understanding that Rashi offers, that Rashi says that this is the Iker of Shita Shmuel b'Shitas Rav Shimon, and that is that when you read the Mishnah, it sounds right that Rav Shimon is lenient. You can carry anything from anywhere, inner, outer, from B to A, from B to C, there are no restrictions. No, Shmuel understands that Rav Shimon, who's the lenient one, only allows the outer to the inner. Only allows C to carry something from C to B and to carry something from A into B. But even Rav Shimon, according to Shmuel, does not allow the bnei of the middle chatzir to carry not to one nor to the other, because he's also afraid that if the movements, right, will go from the inner to the outer, think about it, from the outer to the inner you can carry. It means something from A can go into B. If you can carry from the inner to the outer, you might take that item and take it to the other outer. And that is something that is prohibited because the two outer ones did not make an eruv chatzeros. Or in other words, Rashi, the second Shita Rashi, understands that Shmuel b'Shitas Rav Shimon is exactly mirrors Rav b'Shitas Chachamim. Okay, now let me just repeat that just to have to be able to go further. Let's put Rav on the side. We are up to Shmuel. And we're going to learn the second Shita Rashi and Shmuel. All of this is very negeya to understand the whole flow of the Gemara. We have the case of the three Chatzeros. We know that Rav Shimon is lenient. We introduced yesterday a Chachamim that are machmir. What do the Chachamim hold, according to Shmuel, that since the two outer Chatzeros did not make an eruv with each other, A and C made no out of Chatzeros, I don't care that B made an eruv with A and that B made an eruv with C. It doesn't work. The Chachamim say that nothing from either Chatzar can ever go to any other Chatzar, no matter what direction you're moving. Period. Total lockdown. Rav Shimon, who's the lenient one, is taka lenient, but he only allows movement from the outer ones to the inner one. Okay, so we're learning Pshat of Shmuel, Lanashi, B'Shitas, Rav Shimon, and now we're going to start Daf Mem Tes Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the top of the Amud. Says the Gemara Tanya, Kavasi the Rav Yehuda Aliyah the Shmuel in the Shita of Rav Shimon, that Rab Shimon was the lenient ones, not free for all, right? Nor was then, not the way Rav understands, you can carry the way we also learned the Mishnah. No, Rab Shimon holds that the outer Chatzeros can carry something that began Shabbos in the outer Chatzer to the inner one. And what's the Braisa? Look at the words of the Braisa. Rab Shimon, and in the Braisa, Rab Shimon was referring to the same case we had in the Mishnah. The case in the Mishnah did not begin with Chatzeros. The Mishnah began that when you have a scenario where a person left one's tchum and they only have daled amas, so the Mishnah began with the case if you have three people, each one only having daled amas, and they're very near each other, each one is only 2 amas apart from each other, and if you'll take a look at that in your mind, you'll see, which means that the inner one's daled amas overlaps with the 2 outer ones, but the 2 outer ones don't overlap at all with each other, right? And the question was, can someone take something from the outer ones and bring it to the inside? And Rab Shimon obviously holds that they could, and to back that up, I'm back to Amar Rab Shimon Lamad Over Daimam, L'Sholish Chatzeros, Hapsuches Ulazu, Upsuches L'Rishus Rabim, each one has an opening to Rishus Rabim, and Ibu Shtayim Imam Tzois, A made an Eruv with B, C made an Eruv with B, but the A and C did not make an Eruv. Now listen to the direction that the Braisa is speaking about. Zu means any one of the outer ones. They can take, for example, food from their outer chutzner, carry it into the inner chutzner, and eat it there. That goes to the outer one to the right, A, and the outer one to the left, the next one, the Zu. Can take food that began Shabbos in C and bring it boichelas and eat it in B. You can carry something from the outer to the inner. Now listen to this nuance. If something began Shabbos in the outer chutzner, here even Shmuel let up Shimon is moide, you can take it back. But there's no one is debating that, because no, that's the wrong picture. That's the wrong picture. You can take it back. We're not up to the picture yet. Why can you take it back? Because it didn't begin in the inner. And then that's the deal. Zuma chazeres l'toich beisa. Zuma chazeres l'toich beisa. Note how the Braisa Dafka is not speaking about something that began Shabbos in the middle, because that's taka the whole shita, the way Rashi learns, of Shmuel and of Shimon, that even when we are lenient, we are never lenient to allow something that began Shabbos in the middle to go to any one of the outer ones. It's only from outer to the inner, and that item itself, since when Shabbos began, it was in the outer one, it can be brought back to the outer one. And taka, we're not afraid that you're going to end up carrying it to the other side. That's the leniency and the proof of Rab Shimon. That shloshtan asurois, again, that's also a raya to Shmuel, not the way Rav understands in the Chachamim, that even the Chachamim allow from the outer to the inner. No, the Chachamim completely prohibit. This is mamish a braisa that articulates the machlokes, the Chachamim and Rab Shimon the way Shmuel does. And now the Gemara goes further. Now that Shmuel limits the leniency of Rab Shimon. Even Rab Shimon never allows something that begins in the inner chutzner to go to either one of the outer chatzeros. Now we'll understand the following. We learned a rule above that was actually said by Shmuel, as Rashi reminds us, that by ERUVIN we always follow the Divrei HaMekel, right? If Rav would have been right the way he understands Rab Shimon, which is that you can move from the inside to the outside, from the outside to the inside, there's no limitations in wherever something began in, since the inner one and both outer ones made an eruv, then the next statement, mamish, won't make sense. However, now that we see that Rab Shimon himself was also restrictive, you can only go from the outer to the inner. Now it will make sense the following. Amar Shmuel, now you can put the picture back up. And for those here can see, I made my beautiful drawing over here. I mean, the Nakuda is almost the same. If we can get the picture back up on Zoom, just for the web audience over here on Chabad.org, maybe you can make it larger, that will be of help. So whoever is watching this on Chabad.org, take a snapshot of the screen. I have to put it down if I can't see you. And if you can make the pic on Zoom bigger, it will be very helpful. So here, if you'll notice the following. Here, no chatzir has access to the Rishus HaRabim. It's a simple case of a mavui. Now look what's happening over here. In the outer chatzeros, right, as you can notice, there are two batim. So again, we begin that each chatzir made an eruv with themselves. If not, they can't even carry from their house into the chatzir. They made that. Now normally, what would allow these yidden to carry stuff from the chatzir into the mavui? Well, first of all, as you see in the picture, you got to make a lechi, right? It's a mavui sasum, but you made a lechi, but nevertheless, since two sides have access to the same mavui, the outer and the inner, going in both directions, so you would have to make what we would call a shituv muva'os. For all of them to be partners in everything, for them to be allowed to take it to the inside. Okay, leave this picture on, say this a little bit bigger. Now, think about it. What happens, you would think, what happened here was, no, the other bigger one was better. That the middle one, the one to the one side is A, the one to the other side is C, and the middle one is B. Same thing happened over here. A made a shituv mavos with B. C made a shituv mavos with B, right? Which means that if you look at every mavoi individually, you would say, fantastic. Whoever has an opening to the mavoi made a shituv with each other. Not fantastic. I'll tell you why it's not fantastic. Because since A and C did not make a shituv mavos, now people from one side not only can carry into the mavoi, but they can carry into the middle chatzir. Now, if the people from the middle chatzir will be able to carry to the mavoi of the other side, that's a problem now. That's a problem now because both sides did not make a shituv mavos with each other. Same issue. It's mamish the same issue, but here we're going with the mavoi. Now, again, Shmuel already said that he's going to follow the divrei hamekel. If Rav is right, b'divrei Rab Shimon, that Rab Shimon holds that both sides can carry to the middle to the side to the middle, then all of these mavos would be allowed to be used. True, something that began in the chatzir from one side cannot be taken into the mavoi and into the chatzir and into the other mavoi. Okay, but don't do that. Don't do that. But everyone can use the mavoi that they are opening into. But we're going to see that Shmuel doesn't say that. We're going to see that Shmuel paskins obviously l'shita soy, the way he understands even in Rab Shimon, that you got yourself some problem over here. Because nothing from the inside can go to the outside. Nothing from the inside can go to the outside. Let's read inside. Let me find my line over here. If the inner one made an eruv, meaning a shituv mavos with both outer ones, the problem here is that the chatzeros from both sides did not make all a shituv with each other. It's only the inner with A and the inner with C. You know what happens? The inner one cannot go out anywhere, but they can walk. They can't carry anywhere. The inner one cannot carry anywhere because that's going out. The inner one cannot go out. No, guys, both sides can go into the mavoi. The people that are living in A, the people that are living in C, they can go into the mavoi. Why? I'll tell you why. Because what's the problem? Because the ones in the middle also have access to the mavoi. They made an eruv. The outer can go to the inner. Perfect. The inner cannot go to the outer. Now, look at next. If the middle one did not join a shittuv with anyone, right? So now, not only can the ones from the middle not carry anything into either one of the mavos, to neither of the mavos, if the middle ones did not make an eruv b'chlal shittuv mavos, then it's self-understood. Not only may they not take something out into the mavoi, no one can take anything into the mavoi. Because how can any side, A or C, how can they go into the mavoi? They're not the only ones using the mavoi. The mavoi is also servicing the middle. There was no shituv made. Finished. So you can't carry there. Now, another detail. What happens if the guys that live in the middle would always use one mavoi? Even though you can see in the picture, they have an option of using either sides. It's open to either sides. But they are regila with one side. So now, in the case where they make no shituf mavais at all, so by me, the one to the right, let's say the one to the right is the one that the middle one always uses, the one to the right. They did not make shituf with anyone, but they never used the one to the left. So now we're saying a leniency, that the guys all the way to the left, they can carry out into the mavri. The middle one is open to it and they did not join the shituf, doesn't matter, they're not regila. So zeh regila by the one that they use tak is asur, because they did not make a shituf with the side chatzir. But the zeh ain't a regila, but let's say if the ones that live in the middle never walk out toward their left, so then the chatzir is all the way to the left is mutter. Another detail, all of this is just a raya that if Rav would have been correct, I mean, Shmuel argues with him. According to Rav, if we're going to paskin kedivri hameko, in our case, even though normally we do not paskin like Rav Shimon, but here by Eruv, there's a rule that we paskin kedivri hameko. According to Rav Shimon, in the first case that Shmuel mentioned, where the middle one made an Eruv with A, the middle one made a shituv with B, with C. The only problem is that A and C did not make a shituv. According to Rav, everyone can carry out into the mavri, no problem. But you see, Shmuel restriction that Rav Shimon himself is also only allowing from the outer to the inner. Now,
Rabbi, can you just clarify one thing? This concept of regila. So, if he's regila with the first mavoi, when it says the other one is mutter, it's mutter to the residents of the third section, right?
The third one, that they can carry stuff from their chatzon into the mavri, because they made no shituv. So
right.
They already made an eruv with each other. They made an eruv with each other. So why would they have to join the other ones in the middle? The other ones in the middle never use it. We can make there.
So the guy in the middle can't carry in either of them, but the guy all the way on the left could carry there because he has a chatzir, an Eruv Chatzeris with his neighbor.
Doesn't want it. Now let's go right there. Another few details. The guys in the middle, they joined the shituv with the one to the left, even though they never go there. So now, now the one that's regila, the one that they normally would make a shituv with, are not going to be restricted by the fact that the ones in the middle did not join them in the shituv. Why not? Because the fact that the ones in the middle for this Shabbos made a shituv with side C, even though they never go into that mavui, when they did that, they are basically disassociating themselves with the other mavui. They're making a shituv with side C. They're basically telling, hey, for this Shabbos, we're not going to go on your mavui. Same concept. Once they're not going to go there, then who cares if there's no shituv with the ones in the middle? Another detail. All right. If again the case that everyone made a for themselves, all right. The ones in the middle made an eruv with side A that they always walk with. And the ones in the middle did not make a shituv with the other side. Now, what did we learn above? That even when the ones in the middle make an eruv with side A, what did we just learn? That's the whole chiddush here. They still cannot go out on side A. They cannot go out because from the inner you can't go to the outer. So if they made an eruv, but they did not make an eruv with side C, so what we say is, even though they made an eruv with side A, we say the following. We're going to say like this, that since side C anyways cannot carry, why can they not carry side C? Because if the side C did not make an eruv with the center, then not only can the center not use it, even side C cannot use the mavi, cannot carry into the mavi. So once there is a scenario that one side anyways is restricted, so we say if that's the case, we're going to connect the middle, that is B'chlal not allowed to carry, with side C, even though they made a shituf with A. And the moment we connect the middle with one side, what did we just learn? then the outer side can carry nonetheless. And that's the concept called koifen al midas sodoim. In other words, if you're going to halachically connect the middle one to the other side, even though they made no shiur in there, but it's not going to ruin anything for anyone other than, but doing that is going to at least benefit a party, then you do what's beneficial. Don't forget, guys, one nakuda is that whether a shiur was made between B and A and B and C, if you didn't have a shiur of all three together, the middle ones are restricted anyways. So we're going to do whatever we could now, at least to free up that the b'nei of the outer chatzeros, they at least should be able to go into the Mavli. Now, if they made an eruv, they can go. If both of them made an eruv, they both can go. If only one side made an eruv, then that side can go. But there can be a scenario, and like we just did in the last case, where boom, if the outer one cannot go there anyway, then connect the middle to that outer one, and then the other side, even though they didn't make an eruv, is going to be allowed to carry, because as long as we say that the middle one is disassociated from either of the sides, that side can carry to the Mavli. Okay, weiter. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Other details regarding ERUVIN Chatzeris. We're going to learn about ERUVIN Chatzeris up until the Mishnah Daf Tesam days. Hamakpid al ERUVIN. Now, more details as we'll start unfolding the sugya. For people to join in an ERUV Chatzeris, each one has to participate by giving food. I know nowadays we use instruments, we take a box of matzah and we are mezakit to all the bnei HaChatzer, but ideally everyone gave food. Now, what happens if one of the chevra that live in the Chatzer doesn't want for anyone to eat his bread? He's participating in the ERUV, he's putting food in the basket, but he's saying, no one touched my food, it's for me. Says Shmuel, the whole ERUV doesn't work. And my friends, appreciate the fact that if the ERUV does not go into effect, if there's one member in this Chatzer, one bias in the Chatzer that is not part of the ERUV, I know that there are solutions, but before we find solutions, he asks for anyone to go from their house into the Chatzer. So it's ERUV means everyone has to become incorporated. So if one guy is makbid, don't eat my bread, he ruins the incorporation. Why? Because mashamai, what's the name of this? It's called an ERUV. ERUV means a merging. You're making a merger. You're making a partnership. That's not called a partnership. Putting bread in the basket, but saying, oh, but that's mine. I put it, but only I can eat it. That goes against the ruach of the ERUV. Similarly, Rab Chanina argues, and he says, no, ERUV. Because at the end of the day, he put bread there. But this person is a Vardina-nik. Vardina was the name of a location that people there were very stingy. Today you have such places, but if you mention those places, you can be called, I don't know, a racist. You have to be careful. The Gemara had no problem. The Anchi Vardina were stingy people, so they ate a word, but he's a stingy guy. Now, let's go back to Shmuel. A similar ruling. If people are placing an ERUV in, they're gathering bread from every b'nei bias to make an ERUV, and one person doesn't put his ERUV in the same basket, but he puts his bread in a separate basket. Says Shmuel again, Einoi ERUV. And the Gemara right away jumps. Didn't we just quote yesterday, B'Shamai V'Silo, Kaman K'B'Shamai, and that's the end of the world. The Tanya, Chamisha Shegavu ERUVim, right? 5 houses lived in the same Chatzer. They shared a common area, and everyone gave. But they put it in different kalim. Beishamai says Eize ERUV, it has to be mamish together. Beisilo says Eize ERUV. So is Shmuel's ruling based on Beishamai? Or says no. Hassan. We don't care if it's in 2 separate kalim. It has to be in the same house. It's called the same location. It doesn't have to be in the same keli. Why is it in 2 kalim? Everyone began to put their food in a basket, in a keli. It got full. There was still bread left that didn't fit into the mana, so they put it in another mana, on another keli. Beisilo doesn't care. First white line. But over here, the case of Shmuel is that one person, B'dafka, put it separate. Where he himself intentionally separated, loy. Same concept. Because what is it called? Mashmai, Eruv Shmai. Eruv means to merge, to incorporate. You're doing an act of incorporation by dafka remaining separated. Doesn't work. Now it's so similar. The Gemara says v'tarta lamali. Gemara says no. Each one has a little nuance that the other one doesn't have. If Shmuel only would have taught the Ashmin and Hassan, the first case where he says don't eat mine, then it doesn't work because he said that he was makbid. But over here he put it in a separate keli, but he made no such declaration. Likewise, v'yashmin in only the two kalim. It doesn't work because the palge mifla, because he intentionally put it in a different keli. But when he puts it in the same basket, put food in the basket, pass it around the table, and make an announcement: no one take my piece of chicken. Well, they listen to you, lav dafka. And maybe it is considered an incorporation. So again, sricha to articulate that in both cases, Shmuel holds that the Eruv doesn't work. And he made this statement to Rabbi Yehuda, the Bei Matzar to the Bei Rab Zakoi in Rab Zakoi's winery. In other words, the whole concept, as we learn in Chassid, is that the real kavana is that when you are in the marketplace, when you're doing business, you bring Kedusha in there. You see another Yid, you tell him Apsad Var Torah, you tell him an inspiring story. Here, he found a Yid, he found Rabbi Yehuda, he had a kasha, Chaptarai. And he asked him, "Mi Omar Shmuel achelik esroi ena Eruv." Did Shmuel say that? Omar Shmuel by Eruv. When you have many members in a chutzner, let's say you have 5 people that live in the same common area, everyone is participating with bread. So there's a rule. You know what? Where are you placing it? It's not placed in the chutzner. It's placed in a house. The home that is hosting the Eruv need not put bread in the basket. Now, the Havamina is that they don't have to put bread in the basket, they have to give food. They don't have to put it in the basket, is because they already have food in the house. We don't need it to be in the same basket. So, did Shmuel say that what? That if it's not together, if it's separated, then it's no Eruv. Didn't Shmuel say, that balabas doesn't have to himself participate by giving bread? And again, the Havamina is that he has to have bread. He just doesn't have to put it in the manna. And my tamalab bishum the amar, the keep in the manna chasala, there you go, sola, basket, togetherness. That once, since, listen, the Eruv, he has his own bread placed in a basket, in his house, in the bread basket. Is command the manna chacha, dummy. So, Hachinami, why don't we say that even though it's not in the same keli, is kivan the manach besala? Listen, the guy was not makbet. I get it that he put it in another basket, but why is that considered an act of fighting the incorporation? Well, how is it different than this case? Why don't we say command the manach hachinami? Answers the Gemara Amar Lei. So Rabbi Yehuda tells Rabbi Abba, he misunderstood Shmuel. What Shmuel really means is that the home that is hosting the Eruv food need not b'chlal have bread. Hasam afal pi she'ein pas. My tamo. Now we begin. Why does he not have to give bread? Because the kula hachi dairi. The kula hachi dairi. Can we look inside the Rashi 8 lines before the bottom of the Amid, like in the middle of the Rashi is under the Amid. The kula hachi dairi. Mishum piton havelohu dirasan. How does everyone who gives food, how are they becoming incorporated? Now we're starting. Because if I have my food in your house, to a certain degree, I'm already living in your house. So it's the whole goal of joining an Eruv together is for everyone to be living together. He already lives there. He's the balabas. So the kol shchein balabayis shehu dar sham mamish betoichai va'afilu einli pas b'chol abayis shaper dami. So yeah, Shmuel holds that if you need bread, but my bread and your bread are in 2 different kalim, it's not a good Eruv. The balabas doesn't eat bread at all. Now that we mentioned about everyone living together with the bread, so now we're going to have the big machlokes. How does an Eruv Chatzedus function? Omar Shmuel, one opinion, Eruv Mishum Kinyan. In other words, imagine, if I'm giving bread to the Eruv, my bread is worth of sapruta or more. I'm putting my bread there, I acquire, not for dinei mazikin, not for dinim of ownership, but as far as Shabbos is concerned, I acquire a pruta's worth of the host house. So if there are 5 people in a common area, 4 of them are giving bread, they're putting it in the house of ERUVIN, all of those 4 people, they own, so to say, they acquire, so to say, the equivalent of the worth of their bread in the home of ERUVIN, which means that ERUVIN's home doesn't only belong to him now, it belongs to him and to the other 4 people. In other words, everyone now is a balabas in one area. And now we view all of the other houses and all of the common area as a extension, as a subsidiary to that home. So everyone, that's, you make an incorporation. Everyone becomes a balabas, even on a minute way. And not, again, it's not that they own it, that if someone steals this house, they're going to be chayv to pay damages or they burn the house down to each b'nei hachatzer. But for Shabbos, you acquire it. If it's about a kinyan, then why would money not be a great instrument to make an eruv? Why did they insist on food? Right? He's giving a number of money. So the answer is, Erev Shabbos, people don't have money. People spend all the money for Shabbos. So you're going to tell you have to make an eruv with money, then people won't have what to make an eruv with. At least let us say that if you used money, it should work. And we know it's not that case. It has to be food. So the more answers is that if you will allow once for money to be used, people are going to think, especially that Shmuel holds, that eruv mishum kinyan, that you need money. And because they're gonna think you need to use money. And once people stop making an eruv chatzeres, the asi eruv le'i kalkule, this whole institution will become disused. I know here in LA, because of many who can follow their shittas and halacha, that they rely on the eruv here in LA for the eruv chatzeres, which we do not. You tell a yid, you got to make an eruv chatzeres, you won't know how to do it. Those people will stop doing it. Chazal wanted everyone to make an eruv chatzeres. So they said, you can't use money, you got to use bread. Shita number 1. Shita number 2. Rabbi Ahmed, the last line of the Ahmed. It's very important, the sugya. Eruv has nothing to do with kinyan. It's simply living. Eruv mishum diro. In other words, it affects that if I have my food in your residence, I reside there. I don't have to own it. And the same concept. If all of the 4 people in this complex, right, there are 5 houses, if 4 of the houses, each one gave of their food, and they put it in ERUVIN's house, it means that for that Shabbos, or as long as the food is there, when Shabbos comes in, they all live there. They all reside there. It means there is one resident, there's one home that has in it now 5 residents. Now we view all else, all of the other houses as a subsidiary, as a tuffle, the meshamish, that ikir bayis. So now they're all incorporated. Now, my benayu, whether it's mishum kinyan or mishum dira, so the Gemara is going to give a few nafkaminas going both ways. Nafkamina number 1, if you want to use a keli, we said money you can't use. Fine. What happens if you don't have bread? You're using a utensil. So here's the thing. According to Shmuel, that you have to affect a kinyan, a keli can affect a kinyan. A keli can affect a transaction. The whole kinyan sudra is with a keli. According to Rabbi, is that all of the other members reside where their food is. I don't reside where my keli is. Number 1. Nafkamina number 2. What happens if the food that you gave was not worth a pruta? According to Shmuel, it has to affect the kinyan. If it's not worth a pruta, it cannot affect the kinyan. According to Rabbi, it's about you reside where your food is. So even if the food had no shava pruta, it doesn't matter, it's still food. And daf memtes on the days, the third nafkamina, if the one that's being used as an agent to collect the food from, in our example, the 4 other homes, if he is a minor, according to Shmuel, right, that eruv has to affect the transfer of ownership. And here what's happening, the people giving the bread are basically appointing the shliach as their agent, right, to affect this kinyan. A katan cannot affect a kinyan. According to Rabbi, it's all about me having my food in ERUVIN's house. I don't care how it got there. Doesn't bother me that a katan is the one that brought it there. I reside with my food. So there, according to Rabbi, a cotton being used as the collector will affect the native. Now, says the Gemara, Rabbi tells Rabbi, after hearing these two opinions, kasha and ulishmol kasha. Why is that? Kasha and both. Second line. Number one, because it says on the Tanya, es ERUVIN. Here, the Brisa is referring to a case where you have a chatzar that merged with each other, similar to the case in the Mishnah, but there's only two chatzers. Don't get nervous. It's simple. Chatzar A, chatzar B. Every chatzar has many diyodim. Chatzar A already made an eruv with each other. Chatzar A wants to now join an eruv with their neighboring chatzar. So one thing is clear. If you take the whole basket of food from chatzar A and you bring it over to chatzar B, that also affects a complete merging between these two chatzeros. But you need not take the whole basket there. That's the Brisa. Chamisha shugavim es ERUVIN in chatzar number one, and they now want to they want to extend this incorporation to their neighboring chatzar. When they take it over there, they don't have to take all the food there. You don't need to have every member of chatzar one giving new bread. No. Take one loaf of bread that only belongs really to one guy in chatzar number one. He brings it into chatzar number two, and everyone in chatzar A is now a participant in chatzar two. Echad moilech lekula, mamish. No, you don't have to move the whole eruv. You don't even have to. You can have one person taking also a new piece of bread and taking it into chatzar number two. Since chatzar A is already merged, so what one does now is going to schlep everyone along with him, and now he doesn't understand. According to Shmuel, that it has to affect the kinyan. Mainly, if I give food in chatzar number two, so I acquired a shtickle in chatzar number two. Who knew the kakani? But if you have to have ownership, or for Hilchas Shabbos, some sort of ownership, how can I? It's not your bread. You're not giving anything to, in exchange, have that amount of ownership. And it's about I live where my food is. If only one member of chatzar number one has food in chatzar number two, but the other ones have no food there, how do they live there? Who knew the kadai? If he gave bread, he lives there. But basulai. So answers Amalei. So Rabbi tells his son, his Talmud, Amalei, loy lididi kasher, loy lishmol kasher. Because this concept of the Brisa is that once chatzar A already became a corporation, then an action of one is not viewed as he's acting for himself. It's automatically viewed as he's acting on behalf of everyone. He is representing everyone. In other words, shlichus the kula the kavod, and it goes both ways. So if you need to do a kinyan, he's making a kinyan for all. If he has to move in there because you're moving with your food, it's everyone's food. And therefore, like the Brisa gives us leniency, you don't need to take the whole ladle over there. You only need to have one moving over his food over there. Final. Then Amar Rabba, Amar Rav Chama Bar Guria, Amar Rav, Halacha Kirab Shimon. Now that we established, going back to the case of the Mishnah, three chatzeros adjacent to each other, and only the outer ones made an eruv with the inner one, the two outer ones did not make an eruv with each other. Rav Shimon is for sure lenient. Whatever that shita is, I mean, Rav L'Shitasi that holds that even the Chachamim allow from the outer to the inner. Rav holds that Rav Shimon holds, according to all versions, that you can go in both directions. So Rav paskins like Rav Shimon. Now the Gemara is not telling you that we paskin like Rav's interpretation of Rav Shimon, but the chiddush here is, like we just learned a few daf ago in the Klali Halacha, that normally we don't paskin that much like Rav Shimon. And here it's Rav Shimon with the Chachamim. So you would think for sure we don't paskin like Rav Shimon, but there's another rule that trumps the first, and that is that by Eruv we follow the Divrei HaMekel. And whether you understand Pshat in Rav Shimon like Rav, or you limit it like Shmuel, regardless, Rav Shimon is the lenient one, and we paskin like him. And now, my friends, we're coming back to Eruv Tchumen. So like we mentioned in the intro, Ma'arav Baraglav is a bona fide way of establishing an Eruv Tchumen. Sending a shliach with food is what we keep on learning is a great way to establish an Eruv Tchumen. Now we're going to learn a more lenient way. Says the Mishnah, a person is traveling. and it's getting dark, it's getting Shabbosdik. Or we have from the Yerushalmi on the side, for whatever reason, he is unable to get close enough to the city. Now, let's speak about a case where there would be a tree. There's a big tree that's near, perfect, that's 2,000 amas or closer to the city. If he would be there, Amachaya, he's ma'arif beraglov, he's going to be kind of shvisa by the tree, and that's going to allow him to walk all the way to his house. Problem here is that he's 4,000 amas away from his house, or a little bit less. That means if he's not going to place an Eid of Techumen, someplace between him and his house, then he should not be allowed to get to. But it's dark. What should he do? Even if he has a shliach and he has the food, there's not enough time to send food there. So the chiddush of the Mishnah is, if he makes a specific oral declaration by saying exactly where my makom hashvisa is going to be, if he does a specific, it works. But it has to be specific. You know what specific means? He can't say by the tree, not enough, says the Mishnah. Right? He knew there's a landmark. He knew exactly where. For example, he knew there's a tree, or there's a gutter, there's some sort of fence. And if he gives just a generic statement, my makom hashvisa is under the tree, not specific enough. Lo yomar klum. Now, what happens since lo yomar klum? That will be the machlekes we'll have in the beginning of the Gemara. We'll get to. But if he says the way he should say, a specific location by the tree, shvisasi bi ikara, I'm kind of shvisa by the trunk, then it worked. Not meraglov, no bread, just a declaration. And therefore, as long as the trunk is not more than 2,000 amas, then he can walk there because he's within the tchum of the tree. And if the house is not more than 2,000 amas away from the tree, weiter good. Even after he gets Shabbos, he can walk. He can walk up until 4,000 amas, and that's a huge chiddush again. So there was no eruv v'raglov, there was no bread, there was a specific declaration. Now, says the Mishnah, what happens if he doesn't know such a landmark? And he's 4,000 amas away from his house. He doesn't know that halachically a specific oral declaration, if you have to specify exactly where by the tree, he doesn't know that it would work. So what did he say? So good. Really, Tosfos says he doesn't have to say shvisasi b'mekoymi. We're giving this din to build up for the next. But if he says shvisasi b'mekoymi, so then he cannot make it home. He's kind of where he is. And again, like Tosfos says, second Tosfos, right? Well, if he would be sleeping, that would be a problem. Now it's the machlekes, right? Rabbi Yechon and the Chachamim. But we'll see soon why we're making this statement. Now, when you have 2,000 amas, how does that work to each side? So there's two ways of looking at it. So guys, take a look at my beautiful picture over here. So either it can work, put the guy in the center and draw to each direction 2,000 amas and circle it. You see, but if you are only allowed to circle your 2,000 amas, then the corners is the area that you won't be allowed to walk in. So there's a machlokes whether you circle it or whether you can be more lenient and you can square it, which will give you a substantial more space in which you can walk. First it is agulois. No, even more. That middle boys, you can make a square, and that will be ketavla middle bas, like a square tablet. The Chachamim allow you to do that because you're going to have a nice amount of space, which is the areas we're going to put up over here, or the Yaakov is schwitzing over here. The kid said, I had my beer. Oh, okay, good. So now, next case. Okay, take your time. No, you can start schwitzing on the other picture. We'll need it soon. So now that we said that your makom shvisa is where you are, says the Mishnah, that the ani doesn't have to put food in his makom hashvisa, he only has to be there. Ma'arav v'raglav. However, Amar Rav Meir, Ein lanu elo ani. Okay, making a declaration for where you are, being at a place and saying that this is my makom hashvisa only works if you're an ani. However, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, again, guys, Rabbi Yehuda and Meir, we pass on like Rabbi Yehuda, as we learned above. No, echad ani v'echad asher. Ma'arav v'raglav always works. That has bread, that has a shliach, that she for him not to need to go out. Okay, now let's go back. Okay, we have now the beautiful picture of the square and the circle, which is very simple. But now let's begin on the Gemara. What was the first case in the Mishnah? I'm 4,000 amos away from my house, or less, but I'm more than 2,000 amos away from my house. I'm not going to make it there before Shabbos. I actually know of a landmark that's in between me and my house. What are we learning in the Mishnah? That an oral declaration is enough to make my makom hashvisa by the landmark. But there's a detail. I have to specify where at the landmark, not under the tree. I have to say by the trunk of the tree. And if I didn't say that, so how did the Mishnah begin? Lo yomar klum. Now that lo yomar klum, now Chevra, listen to this. Rabbi Yaakov, please get up the other picture. What will be the consequence? Very good. Leave that up there. Amarav lo yomar klum kol iker. Wow. Listen to this, Chevra. It means like this. If I would say nothing, what did we learn in the Mishnah? Certainly according to Rabbi Yehuda. If I enter Shabbos at a location, that becomes my shvisa, and I have 2,000 amos in each direction, in all directions, circle, square. But here, since I declared that I want for my makom shvisa to be by the tree, which means that I am rejecting my current location as a makom shvisa. I want it to be by the tree, not here. Since I didn't specify the place by the tree, the Mishnah says it doesn't work by the tree. It's called kareach mikan v'kareach mikan. So now you have no makom shvisa at all. What's the din for someone who has no makom shvisa? That's the beginning of the Spedic. It's like someone that left his tchum on Shabbos. You know what you have now? 4 amos. Mainly here also you have the 3 machlokes tanoim. Is it really 8 amos? Or are you Rabbi Eliezer in the center of the 4? Rabbi Yehuda, you get to choose which side the 4. You only have 4 and you lose everything. So, you know, we have in Bava Metzia a person who finds a hefker, right, and he throws himself on the hefker. So he's not koined. So the Gemara says, why don't we apply kinyan daladamas? So the Gemara says, no. The fact that he threw himself on it, he was megaladas, that he's not soymech on daladamas. And he didn't pick it up. He didn't do hagbah, he didn't do mashicha, so he loses it all. Same thing over here. That's Rav. He can't even go there. Why can he not go there? Because the tree is 2,000 amos away or less. No, he's stuck in 4 amos. Rav, Machir, Shmuel Amar, Yamar Klum Lebeisai, can't make it to his house. But he is allowed to go to under the tree. Now hold on a second. Why can't he go to his house? So now this picture is really great. Maybe if you can move it a little bit more to the left, but you got the main akud. Now, just for those who are looking at the screen over here, just while I made also a beautiful drawing for the Chabad.org crowd. Okay, it doesn't matter, it's good. The house, from where you are, no, you got the wrong picture here. That's the wrong picture. There's another picture, Yaakov. The house to the trunk of the tree is exactly 2,000 amos. The house to the trunk of the tree, not like in that picture. Maybe this picture. This picture. Do you see the bottom arrow in the picture? And the same thing by Mike Royce painting over here. The bottom arrow is showing you the distance between the house and the trunk of the tree. Now this Chacham, who did not specify by the trunk, he said under the tree. So maybe under the tree, you know where under the tree is? Under the tree is in the closest part of the tree to him. The closest part of the tree to him is a little bit more than 2,000 amos away from his house. Because if from your house to the trunk of the tree is exactly 2,000 amos, so if you're going to take another couple of steps to go to under the leaves, under the branches, even further from the house, even closer to you, it's beyond 2,000 amos. When the Mishnah says Lo Yamar Klum, all that means is that not that your eruv under the tree is.
Rabbi, can you just ask Michael to mute himself? I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's not that your eruv, when you made that declaration, it did not go into effect. It went into effect. But the problem of Lo Yamar Klum is that in the case where your house to the trunk is exactly 2,000 amas, since we don't know exactly where under the tree taka you were we don't know. So we're going to say l'chumra. We're going to say that maybe your eruv is only under the part of the tree that's closest to you. Now that is more than 2,000 amas away from your house, so you can walk there. You can walk there. You can walk to the tree. Narvas then.
Not more than 2,000, less than 2,000.
You to the tree is less than 2,000. You to the tree is less than 2,000. You can walk. I don't know. You to the tree, it can even be. It goes even better. That you have measuring from you not 2,000 amas to the trunk. Avada, you have 2,000 amas to the opposite side of the tree. So since you know, even if you're going to go l'chumra, that you, taka, your eruv, your makam shvisa was in the furthest part of the tree away from you. You can still walk there, says Shmuel. As long as the furthest part from the tree, like you see the arrow, is 2,000 amas or less, you can walk to the tree. The Mishnah means Lo Yamar Klum, you can't walk to the house. Why can you not walk to the house again? Because even though if your eruv would have been by the trunk, which is when you specified that, you would have been allowed to walk to your house. Because from the trunk to your house is 2,000 amas. But since you didn't specify, maybe it was chal on an area that's closer to you, which means further from your house, which is more than 2,000 amas. Ooh, so then you can't go to your house, even though you have an eruv tchumen. An eruv tchumen only allows you to walk 2,000 amas and not more. Let's read it inside. Because maybe the eruv is under the branches, which is more than 2,000 amas away from your house. But for you to go under the tree, in a scenario where any part of the tree, even the farthest part of the tree, is still 2,000 amas and not more away from you, you're allowed to walk. And therefore, we had this expression above, the nasa tachtav shalilan, chamor gamol. Chamor gamol. What's a chamor gamol? That since you didn't specify, well, you always have to be machmer. If you're measuring your tchum from the north side of the tree to determine how far north can you go, you can't start from the north. That's going to bring a leniency. You got to start from the south. If you are measuring from the south side of the tree to know how much further south can you go, well, you can go 2,000 amas. But if you're measuring in the direction of the south, you're not allowed to begin at the edge of the south. No, you have to begin in the most machmer. So then might have been minat sofen, chamar gamol. In other words, the area under the tree will always be subtracted from the 2,000 amas. My friends, God willing, to be continued.
Shkoyach.
You good, guys?
Yeah.
Rabbi, so this last opinion of Shmuel, he basically, when it says that Lo Yamar Klum, he actually has a tchum by the tree. You just have to be machmer which side of the tree, basically.
It says that not only Yom Klum for the tree, but since he doesn't want to be kind of shvisa the Mekaimai, he's mamish, a Jew with only 4 amas. Good.
Shkoyach.